Hello, I am Aviva Lee, reporting live in Jerusalem for Israel 24/6 TV. It is just before noon here in Jerusalem on the 24th of December, 2007. This week, just past, the sovereign state of Israel continued military operations via the Israel Defense Force in the country's fight against the terrorist infrastructures in Judea, Samaria, and the Gaza Strip. To summarize those military operations in the Gaza Strip, this past week the Israel Defense Forces carried out military operations with the intent of placing distance between terrorist organizations, particularly Hamas, and the Israel security fence. The Israel Defense Force also entered the Gaza Strip in order to carry out military action to counter the continuing onslaught of Qassam rockets and mortar shells fired into Israel. In these military operations carried out by the forces charged with defending the sovereign state of Israel and her citizens, more than 20 hostile combatants were hit and identified as being killed. To detail more completely the report I gave on Friday of last week, December 20th, IDF forces from the Infantry Corps, the Armored Corps, and the Combat Engineering Unit, with the assistance of the Israel Air Force, operated in the central Gaza Strip against terror threats. During the activity, an IDF soldier was seriously wounded when a hostile combatant fired an anti-tank missile at the forces. In several instances, the IDF identified gunmen approaching them and responded with fire from the air and from the ground. At that time it was reported that 7 hostile combatants attempting to inflict damage and harm on the sovereign state of Israel were killed. Upon inspection of the bodies of the hostile combatants, different kinds of weaponry were uncovered on or next to their bodies. On December 18th, the Israel Defense Forces targeted an Islamic Jihad terror cell in the northern Gaza Strip. That terror cell was directly involved in rocket firing into the sovereign state of Israel. Israel's soldiers also targeted several armed gunmen who were located near a Hamas post in the southern Gaza Strip. The military's response against the gunmen was conducted following the firing of mortar shells at the community of Kerem Shalom during the day of the 18th. On December 17th, the Israel Defense Force targeted a vehicle carrying an Islamic Jihad terror cell, including Mr. Jihad Daher and Mr. Majed Harazin. Mr. Harazin was one of the heads of the Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip and was in charge of rocket launching cells that launched rockets on a daily basis at communities within the sovereign state of Israel. Also on the 17th, the IDF targeted an Islamic Jihad terrorist cell in Gaza City, of which Mr. Karim Dahdouh was a member. And also in Gaza on Thursday, December 13, the IDF targeted a terrorist cell that fires rockets into Israel earlier that day. In the past week, hostile combatants in the Gaza Strip fired over 45 mortar shells and over 25 Qassam rockets at the communities of the western Negev and against Israel's soldiers charged with the duty of protecting the sovereign state of Israel and her citizens. Most of the munitions did in fact land within Israel's sovereign borders. And now to summarize the military operations of Israel in the Judea and Samaria regions in this week just past. The IDF continued its military operations against terrorist organizations in the Judea and Samaria region and in the Jordan Valley. The intent of Israel's military was to prevent the successful execution of terrorist attacks within the Israeli home front and in Judea and Samaria. And to reiterate what I reported on Friday in more detail during a joint ISA and IDF operation in Silat al-Harithia on December the 19th, an IDF force arrested the Islamic Jihad terror operative by the name of Mr. Sami Zayud after he was discovered hiding in that village. According to military intelligence, the Islamic Jihad in northern Samaria, with which Mr. Zayud was affiliated, is indeed responsible for a large number of suicide bombings in which dozens of citizens of the sovereign state of Israel were killed and hundreds were injured. Mr. Zayud was also responsible for planning an attempted terrorist attack in September 2002. The attack was intended to destroy a residential apartment building by detonating a vehicle outfitted with 400 kilograms of explosive. However, this past Friday, Mr. Zayud was injured by IDF fire during one of its military operations. Also this week just past, a stabbing attempt was thwarted at the Hawara checkpoint when a man who aroused the suspicion of the soldiers manning the checkpoint pulled out a knife and tried to stab an Israel Defense Force soldier. The soldiers detained and arrested the man. He was later taken for questioning by Israel's security forces. During a joint IDF, ISA, and Border Police operation in the Jenin refugee camp on Thursday, December 13th, a special Border Police task force arrested Mr. Abed al-Raham Barjis, who is a senior Islamic Jihad terror operative in the Jenin refugee camp. In the past few years, Mr. Barjis has been involved in numerous shooting attacks. He has also planted concealed explosive devices intended to inflict injury or death on Israel's soldiers in the region. And in this week just past, Israel Defense Forces discovered 2 improvised explosive devices, 2 AK-47 assault rifles, 1 handgun, 1 sniper rifle, and 1 improvised handgun. And in as many as 5 different instances, hostile gunmen hurled an explosive device at IDF forces and opened fire in 5 different instances at IDF forces. Also, IDF forces arrested 80 wanted hostile combatants in the region of Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley. They were taken for questioning by Israel security forces. The Islamic Jihad in northern Samaria, which was responsible for the 2002 attempted terrorist attack, coordinates the terror activity in the cities of Jenin and Tulkarm. It has carried out many suicide bombing attacks against the sovereign state of Israel and her citizens. In those attacks by the Islamic Jihad, dozens of Israeli citizens have been killed and hundreds have been injured. In IDF activity in 2007 so far, 9 terror operatives from the Islamic Jihad in northern Samaria were killed and 11 were arrested. A Patriot missile experiment this past week, the missile was launched, and the launching was conducted in cooperation with Rafael, a company in the south of the country. It is the first such launching of the Patriot conducted in the recent past. Those associated with the launch declared the experiment a success. And that concludes my Monday morning recap of Fact Without Commentary. I am Aviva Lee, reporting live in Jerusalem from room 903 for Israel 24/6. Thank you and Shalom.